that closed captions are available. If you need closed captioning, just click on the icon at the bottom. We are very grateful to Molly Block for providing our live closed captioning today. And we are grateful to all those who have been supporting these regular monthly Azkarah gatherings.
We are gathering today to tend to our grief, to acknowledge our losses, massive losses in our world, deaths and painful transitions in our communities, and the very personal losses in our own lives. Whether you are grieving one or more deaths that were recent or from long ago, you are welcome here.
If you are also grieving societal or environmental losses, systemic threats and stresses, the damage wrought by violence, fires or floods, climate change, or natural disaster, you are welcome here.
Whether or not you are Jewish or read Hebrew, or have explored Jewish ritual for yourself, or something in between, you are welcome here. Whether you are here to mourn one specific person or thing, or the cumulative losses from these past months, or challenging adjustments in your day-to-day life under ever-shifting pandemic conditions, all of these, you are welcome here.
We are grateful to be here with you and to share this space for grief and reflection and perhaps comfort together. There have been so many losses in our lives these past few seasons. Some of the losses of the past year have been obvious and clear. Precious people have died. Homes and forests have burned. Jobs have been lost. Savings evaporated. Businesses and nonprofits were shuttered. Cherished programs shelved. Medical conditions arose. Loved ones declined. Congregants and colleagues, neighbors and friends, students and teachers moved away or fell out of contact. Familiar forms of caring and community remained on hold. Other losses are more amorphous. We still don't know if, when, or what we will get back from the world of 2019 and before. Can we in some ways make up for lost time and separation in our relationships? Will we recover from stressful aspects of work and simply being in the world? Will our kids get to play freely again? Will our favorite cultural venue or restaurant survive? Can our sanctuaries once again be safe and comforting places to gather? How much longer will we continue functioning like this, uncertain of the future, seeking our own sources of strength while so many of us also feel weary or numb, anxious or unruddered, straining to maintain a sense of calm and goodness and possibility for ourselves and for others in our lives? Let us remember how, in the depths of our fear and bereavement, mourning is humanizing. Mourning gives shape and honor to the truth of our pain, our loss, our mortality, and our love. So in a couple of minutes, we'll invite you, those of you who wish and who have the supplies handy, to join us in a hand washing ritual. In preparation for that, I'll read from the poem Wash Your Hands by Dory Midnight. And again, if you want to take a moment for yourself and have supplies handy to be able to pour some water and have a bowl to catch it, a towel to dry your hands afterwards. I'll take a couple of breaths, quiet breaths now before reading the poem that will lead us to that ritual. Wash your hands. We are humans relearning to wash our hands. Washing our hands is an act of love. Washing our hands is an act of care. Washing our hands is an act that puts the hypervigilant body at ease. Washing our hands helps us return to ourselves by washing away what does not serve. Wash your hands like you are washing the only teacup left that your great-grandmother carried across the ocean. Like you're washing the hair of a beloved who is dying. Like this water is poured from a jug your best friend just carried for 3 miles from the spring they had to climb a mountain to reach. Like water is a precious resource made from time and miracle. Wash your hands and cough into your elbow, they say. Rest more, stay home, drink water, have some soup, they say. To which I would add, burn some plants your ancestors burned when there was fear in the air. Boil some aromatic leaves in a pot on your stove until your windows steam up. Open your windows. Eat a piece of garlic every day. Tie a clove around your neck. Breathe. My friends, it is always true, these things. It has already been time. It is always true that we should move with care and intention, asking. It is always true that people are living with one lung, with immune systems that don't work so well, or perhaps work too hard, fighting against themselves. It is always true that people are hoarding the things that the most vulnerable need. It is already time that we might want to fly on airplanes less and not go to work when we are sick. It is already time that we might want to know who in our neighborhood has cancer, who has a new baby, who is old with children in another state, who has extra water, who has a root cellar, who is a nurse, who has a garden full of elecampane and nettles. It is already time that temporarily non-disabled people think about people living with chronic illness and disabled folks, that young people think about old people. It is already time to not take it personally when someone doesn't want to hug you. It is already time to slow down and feel how scared we are. We are already afraid. We are already living in a time of fires. When fear arises, and it will, let it wash over your whole body instead of staying curled up tight in your shoulders. If your heart tightens, contract and expand. It is time to care for one another, to pray over water, to wash away fear every time we wash our hands.
We pause more for a moment. You can gather your bowl or your cup of water if you have it there with you. And you can dip, please, I invite you, dip your hand into the water. Feel the liquid on your fingertips, your palms, flowing over the backs of your hands, maybe submerging even the faintest way up toward the wrist. Perhaps you want to lift some water out and pour it over the other hand. Perhaps you just want to dribble some water up and down. Sit for a moment with the water. Sit for a moment in gentle pause. And then gradually, I invite you to lift your hands out of the water. Feel the air. Reach over. Find your hand towel. And gently dry. And sit in that moment of sensing and feeling.
Let's take another couple of breaths to notice and acknowledge the fullness or the inarticulateness of what you are feeling, what you are sensing, what you're holding in your heart. To acknowledge your relationship with your person or people who have died. Perhaps through the fears that you are letting go. We bring all of that into our makom, our memorial space. And at this time, we'll put on some music in a moment and invite you to put into the chat the name or names of those that you are remembering today. And you may also wish to include their relationship to you or something special or quirky about them, or perhaps a moment you shared or a precious object that reminds you of them, something that's personalizing for you. Well, feel some time as you're typing, as you're reflecting, as you're reading what others have read, to spend a little bit of time with your memories. And again, take some time to read others as well. read some of these too as we go along, so everyone has the benefit of hearing all the names. Sweetheart Jesse, partner in dance and life Chris, Sarabat Hannah, dad and mom Sid and Irene, father Martin, mother Etta, son Michael, pride and joy, attorney, musician, and artist and friend, companion pet Lacey May, sound artist Michael, mom Joan, dad Gerald, brother Dave, dear brother David, dad Dove Samuel, who died far away, loved exercising, doing the things he loved. Aunt Sue, who grew up in Nazi Germany and made it to America, what an inspiration. And her grandmother, Mina, James and Enid, parents of a partner, husband Jerry, who loved children and was a teacher, husband Ray, passionately curious about life and everyone he met, dad Gabriel, who liked to walk and talk on the coastline together, mother Gloria, nursing professor and NICU specialist who saved so many lives, husband Burns, 2 wonderful years together, artist and earth bringer Marlene, artist of the earth and bringer of Van Gogh to many San Francisco neighborhood libraries, Marlene, teacher, friend, and mentor, Ellen, hilariously blunt soul sister, dear friend Nancy, one of a kind, precious husband Mickey, after 55 years. And Leaf, 8-year-old Leaf, red-haired, in love with being incarnate. And I'll add from the Healing Center's extended community, a recent death, Russell, beloved husband, supporter, and community leader. Zichronam livracha. May all their memories be for a blessing.
I invite you, while you remain muted, to read aloud with me in the next poem. When you see the word them on the screen, I invite you to perhaps put in the name or the names of those whom you are remembering today. We remember them. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember them. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer, we remember them. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember them. So long as we live, they too shall live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them. Take another moment of silence here for individual reflection and remembrance before we recite Kaddish together.
As we recite the Mourner's Kaddish, feel free to join me sitting or standing or lying down as feels right for you in this moment. And if you want, at the end, you may unmute for the final shared Amen. We'll have the slides up so everyone can join in. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divra chirutei, ve'amlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'v'yomechon, u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, la'agala u'v'zman kariv v'imeru Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam ul'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei dekudsha brichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata v'amiran be'alma v'imru Amen. Yehi Shlomo Rabba bin Shemaya v'chayim Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru Amen.
Amen.
May the source of peace bring peace to us, peace to all Israel, peace and comfort to all who mourn. And let us say, Amen. So we're going to move into a different mode of nourishment and reflection by engaging in a bit of timeless text from this week's Torah reading in the book of Exodus. It's a practice in some Jewish circles to honor people who have died by studying a little bit of Torah in their honor and their memory. And if you want to join in that intention, you can, or just follow along. The Torah portion for this week is called Mishpatim, and it contains this detail, which we'll have on the slide for you to access too, about the day of rest. Sheshet yamim ta'aseh ma'asecha u'bayom hashvi'i tishbot למען ינוח שורך וחמורך וינפש בין אמתך והגר. 6 days you shall do your work, but on the 7th day you shall cease from labor in order that your ox and your donkey may rest. The word yishbot is the word for Shabbat, has a connotation of rest or Sabbath, 7th day, but also of cessation, of stopping something. So in order that your ox and your donkey may rest, and in order that your handmaid's child and the stranger may be refreshed. So I'm going to read that passage again, just in the English, and invite you to think as I read in the context of your grief. What is ma'asecha? What is your grief work? 6 days of labor here. Or what is all the other activity that you're engaging in? Maybe as a counterpoint to that. So 6 days you shall do your work, but on the 7th day you shall cease from your labor, in order that your ox and your donkey may rest, and that your handmaid's child and the stranger may be refreshed. So we're a good sized group, and I think in small enough, large enough and small enough to be able to engage in some conversation. So feel free to raise your hand or write in the chat if you have a response. And to the following: if we relate this text about work and about rest to our grief in this moment, what do you feel is your grief work? Or what is the other activity that counterbalances resting in your grief work? Yeah, Lenore.
In this area of Santa Cruz, California, we are fortunate enough, congregation Bethel in Aptos has been reaching out tremendously to the congregation with Kaddish call every Friday afternoon, services on Friday nights, Torah study on Thursdays, and numerous programs to keep us connected and informed about what's going on. So it has been a lifeline and a way to work out the grief. We have Rafan Allah on Wednesday afternoons to sit and talk and share our grief together.
Mm.
And I'm very, very grateful.
Grief work is kind of a term of art in some fields as a way of trying to express not that it's a job, but it can be exhausting. It can be work. It takes a lot of energy and sometimes intentional focus, but sometimes the impact of grieving can have on us feels like we are working in some way. So does anyone else have a thought on what your grief work is or how you're attending to that right now? Okay. Well, continue to ponder that as I'll throw out another question, which is in the context of your grief experience and your yearning for yourself, what is Shabbat? What is rest vis-a-vis your grief? What is leaving off or ceasing? If you ever have that feeling. or that wish. Yes, Mary.
At the moment, it feels like the work is sort of tiring to hold the grief, or not just to hold it, but to live with it. So it sort of, it feels like plowing a field or something, like hard farm labor. And so weirdly, the rest seems to be almost that by working and having to, I'm potentially allowed to just rest in the grief without trying to hold it, because so the resting days that I get to just rest, almost like floating in water or something, without sinking or drowning because of all the work I've done during the week or something. I'm not sure it should be this way, but that's what came to mind, what it's like right now.
There's so many different ways to experience that. I appreciate how you put that into words. Anyone else either have a sense of what the rest is for you, or what it could look like? Yeah, Judy.
So similarly, I don't feel that this sounds like we would have choice over having a day of rest. And for me, grief is in charge. I'm not in charge. I can't choose, okay, today I'm not going to be sad. But what it can suggest to me is that I appreciate the times when it does take a rest, given that it's in control, that when I'm having a good day, that I'd be fully conscious of, I don't know if I like the term good, but if I'm having a happy day, if I see joy in something, I should grab onto that and be fully conscious of it when it's happening.
Well, in mining this text a little bit further, I'll suggest or ask if, like in a dream, where the different characters might symbolically represent different parts of ourselves or our experiences, let's play with the idea of the other characters here. Your ox and your donkey might represent aspects of yourself or your inner experience, as with the handmaid's child and the stranger. So what might, again, in the context of your grief, what might the ox symbolize for you? Or does anyone have any associations with the donkey, these beasts of burden? Or not even the handmaid, but the handmaid's child. Yes, Tammy. Right, Tammy, can you unmute yourself so we can hear?
Okay, all
Yeah.
right. So the ox or the donkey could be the hard work that grief is or can be. And I agree that sometimes you're not in control at all of when the waves will come, but you can try to take a break from it. You know, meditation or music or a bath or something. But it's just, for me, exactly 2 months ago, there are so many things that I wish I coulda, shoulda, woulda done. But I should try to take a break from those internal conversations or something like that. But again, I'm new, so learning.
I'll just suggest that as we're all learning this landscape, and perhaps with each loss in a slightly different way as well, that there may be that each of us has a stranger inside of us that is trying to figure this out, and each of us may have an ox that also deserves some way or another rest or refreshment, even if we are not in control of the how or the when. I'll move on to the second part of the text, the slide, which Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki, the 11th century scholar known as Rashi, expounded on the verse that was addressing farmers and real animals, but in a way that could also enrich our grief metaphor. He writes, in order that your ox and your donkey may rest, as he explains that piece, that means give it some satisfaction. And he's playing on the word rest, la nuach, nuach, that they should rest. And there's the word niach also is satisfaction by letting it pull up and eat grass from the ground as it pleases. Can you imagine? Can you maybe even hear in your imagination, see and hear the sight, the sound of the animals satisfied grazing on their Sabbath day? Does Rashi's comment resonate with some of the symbolic associations that you mentioned earlier, that you might be holding in quietly inside? And if so, does this image of the easy grazing add anything? So just we don't have time for a whole lot more conversation about what else came up for you, but I offer these questions for your consideration and just meditation in the moment, and perhaps go back to the original biblical text and that last the fourth from the last word, vayinafash, last word in English, refreshed, to be refreshed. What can that be for you in the context of your grief? It may not be a question we can answer at the moment, although Ruth, it looks like you have a thought. So, and then Judy. And then Debbie too, but starting with you, Ruth, go ahead. Ruth, we can hear you and you're unmuted. Do you want to say something?
Yes.
Yeah.
Rest for me is love, giving it and receiving it. I received a lifetime of love from my aunt, the one who grew up in Nazi Germany. She turned a lot of tragedy into positivity. So I'm trying to pass that down to my nieces. And I'm trying to use food as a form of love to others, because that was a through line in our family. And I find that beauty is restful for me, that walking in the hills here where I live in the city, and that, love and connection is the nurturance that helps me get through her disappearance. And I hear her voice every day. I heard her a little while ago, and that's nurturance too. Really simple stuff.
Thank you. Go ahead, Judy, and then Debbie, you'll be next.
Thank you. So I'm struck by the translation of the text. Says that the seventh day you shall cease from labor, in order that all these others may get rested and refreshed. It doesn't say anything about so that you can be refreshed. And it affirms, last line of that poem, Epitaph, when all that's left of me is love, give me away. And the feeling that when I get out of my own head and my own surus and try to help someone else, I do get relief from my grief.
Thank you. Debbie, and then I think Tammy will have time for you as a last comment. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I had a personal relationship to this reading. My husband died, it'll be a year tomorrow. And he had a stroke 3 years earlier that left him very incapacitated and needed 24-hour caregivers, but he was medically healthy. But for 6 days before he died, he was having really labored breathing, which he had never had before. So I'm thinking of his 6 days of hard work and what we went through with him during that time, and then the release on the 7th day. So I just wanted to share that.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Tammy.
Oh, okay. So how I take it to mean is you need to be refreshed. I am taking it to mean personal. So you need to be refreshed so you can go on. You need to get your strength back. You need to get your energy back, and you have to go on even if you don't want to. And then also, as far as thinking about others, maybe if you give yourself a break, if you can, maybe you're giving others a break too. I don't know. Yeah, that's what I've got.
Thank you. Well, everyone for sharing and for the hope of rest and refreshment on whatever level and for whatever parts of ourselves. Can you hear? May it be so.
So resting in our grief. Here's a blessing for loss. The day always comes when your body learns to live with the loss life has sunk into your bones, learns to let blood pool alongside the broken and jagged fragments of your singular shattering. Healing is not as we imagine. There is no seamless return to who you were before. Help us to trust that the day will arrive when you become one again with the heart you felt torn away from, born back by blessing, by the source of life that moves between each pulse.
Whatever healing or comfort or blessing may look like for you, for each of us, let us take another moment of intention to open ourselves up to that source of life and blessing that moves between each pulse, for each of us and for all of us here. מקור הברכה לאמותינו. May the source of strength who blessed the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing and let us say, Amen. Yishebeach imotei, Mekor habracha lavoteinu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Oh, thank you, everyone, for joining us today, for bringing your caring and weary and hurting and loving hearts, for sharing names and memories and reflections, for being together in the quiet spaces that we held together. Thank you as well to those of you who have been financially supporting the Healing Center and our ongoing grief programs. For those of you who are so moved, Abra is going to put our online donation link in the chat, and we welcome and appreciate your support now as always. Our next Azkarah takes place on February 24th. Feel free to join us again and invite others who may appreciate being with us as well in this sacred space. And as we wrap up today with a closing prayer for peace that I'll be chanting in a moment, I invite you to share some kind of visual gesture of farewell to each other. And thank you again, and shalom. Oh, say shalom bimroma. Uyase shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'imru amen. Yase shalom, Yase shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yase shalom, Yase shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yase shalom, Yase shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yase shalom, Yase shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yase shalom, Yase shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Nimru amen. Shalom, everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being with us and bringing yourselves and blessing each other with your presence. And thank you, Molly, for closed captioning for us and keeping all the words together in front of us. Thank you with your heart as well. And you are so welcome. Blessings as we all go into our 6 days and our Shabbat as well. Phyllis and Tammy, if you want to unmute for a second before you sign off, that's okay too.
I'm unmuted.
Okay. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, it's a lot harder than I ever thought it would be.
Our hearts are with you as you continue on your way, however challenging, rocky, leaf-strewn, peopled or alone that path is for you in the days ahead. Shalom, go in peace.